guess you're not. So I'm going to start with a bracha because it's always a blessing to study Torah with you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kibtanu b'mitzvotav v'asok b'divrei Torah, to be engaged in the study of Torah. So I have never liked the book of Numbers. The book of Numbers is all about the Israelites acting out, misbehaving, giving Moses a lot of grief, being incredibly ungrateful. And I was thinking about it actually based on this conversation. I don't know if any of you saw it on Monday night where we did this panel on the 1-year anniversary of the death of George Floyd. And one of the panelists is a psychologist who specializes in the treating trauma from racism. And I asked her, what does it look like to have trauma from racism? And she gave a lot of interesting symptoms, alcoholism and obesity and drug abuse, but anxiety, anger, irritability. And a lot of these symptoms, I think, are what the children of Israel have. And I started to see them as, victims of post-traumatic stress and, being enslaved and going through everything. And even the kind of terror experience of the 10 Commandments and the mountain and everything. And they're really a mess. They're a mess. And Moses is also falling apart. We're going to see he has just a breakdown in this chapter that we're going to look at 2 chapters. So I thought that was an interesting way to look at them. But also, when I look at the Torah, I see that the Torah, I'm not one of the people who think the Torah was given from God, like Moses got it at Mount Sinai. I think human beings wrote it. I think some of it's incredibly inspired and almost divine in terms of the ethical precepts. It's 3,000 years ago to think this way about humanity. But then in between are these stories of people acting out and God really coming down hard on the Israelites and the people. He's very harsh. And I think this is where the Christians sometimes think, oh, this was the old God, the God of, punishing and cruel. And then the new God, the Jesus, is the loving God. Though God is described as loving kindness. But I thought also I read a book by Deepak Chopra. And he's a Buddhist and he's a religious philosopher. And he said that our image of God is really a reflection of where we are, who we are. And in the ancient world, gods everywhere were punishing when you misbehave. They saw God as a punishing father or a rewarding father. And if you misbehaved, you were out of line, which is probably the way the kings were, the lords were, everywhere. They imagined it. And so God here comes off as quite angry. And the only person who can, and also can be placated only by Moses. Moses is the only one that seems to be able to talk him down from his anger. And I think we have to look at what the people of the time felt they needed from God. They needed God to keep them in line. Because really, they're all over the place. That's not the God that we relate to today. And the prophets who were writing pretty contemporaneously to when the Torah was actually written down, like 800 BCE, that's when the first prophets were starting to emerge. Their idea of God was totally different, a much more universal God, a God who wanted peace, who wanted collaboration, who cared about the poor and whatever. Not that God in the Torah doesn't. But the punishing part was there, but it doesn't seem to be the emphasis in some of the prophets. Some of them are. So with all of that in mind, I wanted to look at 2 chapters. The first one is chapter 11 in the book of Numbers, and it's about, I'm going to put up the text in a minute. It's about the Israelites complaining because they want to eat meat. We want meat. This is their big complaint. After all the stuff they've been through, they're very petulant, and God like a parent says, you want meat? I'll give you meat, and so I want to look at that. And also Moses's reaction to that. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And here it is. So then I share. And then where's everybody else? Okay. So this is Parshat Beha'alotcha. It's Numbers 11. And then I'm going to do Numbers 12, which is about Miriam, my favorite. And I want to get there as well. So it starts off with right away whining and complaining. So would somebody like to read? Because I don't really want to hear my voice for an hour. Joni, you want to read?
Joni Reisman?
Yes, Joni Reisman.
Okay. Now the people complained about their hardships in the hearing of the Lord. And when he heard them, his anger was aroused. Then fire from the Lord burned among them and consumed some of the outskirts of the camp. When the people cried out to Moses, he prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down. So that place was called Taberah, because fire from the Lord had burned among them.
Okay, so where was the fire at this point? What happened? They were complaining, oh, it's so hard. We're walking through the desert. We're sick of it, blah, blah, blah. And according to this, what did God do? Who can tell me? What do you understand God to have done? Anybody?
It says he burned the outskirts and he was among them. So he didn't burn them yet. He was probably just showing his ferocity and power.
Exactly. So I'm trying to open this so I can see more people. Why isn't this opening more? Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, there we go. More people. Thank you. Oh, good. All right. All right. Yes. So something starts burning but that doesn't do anything. It doesn't, it seems like, what's the habit of the people and Moses and God? What's the relationship? We've seen this for a long time. What's the relationship? What's the dynamic? What is the dynamic that Moses has set up with the people? Can you have any idea? Can you get that at all? Yes, Penina.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, the 10 Commandments were divided actually into two. One was the things that you should do, and then 5 of them would be things that you shouldn't do.
Right.
So, but the word mitzvot, which is supposed to be a commandment, but also a good deed, it comes from the word tzivui. Tzivui is to give somebody an order, a command to do something. So,
yeah, but what's the dynamic? That's true and very astute of you.
So I think the dynamic is that they were actually commanded to do certain things like a soldier. Like you have to be there ready to fulfill your command, whatever it is that you're supposed to do. So
they are nothing like that though, right? It seems like the dynamic is they act out, God gets mad, they cry to Moses, oh my God, look what's happening. And then Moses goes to God and says, please don't do it. So they act out, God reacts, then they complain or cry out to Moses, and Moses always is the intermediary. So Moses is trapped in this place where they don't change. They just go to Moses take care of it. Oh my God, what's happening? Right. And then Moses always
like children.
Merle.
I feel like whenever these issues take place, I feel like, God is expecting Moses to handle everything. He's like the middleman. And I think that's where all of these people, whether it's then or now, people get upset because they want to know who God is and what is this? Why can't he talk to us? Why does it always have to come from Moses?
You think they want God? Well, okay, both things are going to happen. So that's very interesting in this chapter. So let's continue. So you read, Merle.
I
Start with
can't
your
because
first-
I'm on my phone and the print, I can't make
Okay.
it bigger.
Who would like to read? Susan
I'll read.
I do it.
or Claudia? Okay, Claudia.
Claudia?
Claudia read, then Susan. Go ahead, Claudia.
The rebel with them began to crave other food. And again, the Israelites started waiting and said, if only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost, also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now we have lost appetite. We've never seen anything but this manna.
Okay. So what are they saying about slavery? What are they saying? It was no, we didn't have to pay. It was free
Yeah.
at no cost.
They had better food.
That's what they're remembering. They're romanticizing. And this manna, we're sick of eating this manna. We had such good food. I mean, they're exactly like children, and you're going to see. Okay, so yes, go ahead.
The complaint shows you that they just didn't want to accept responsibility for their own doing.
You're
That's the whole
absolutely
thing here.
right, and
So-
that's why they ultimately don't even get to go to Israel, right?
They had to, yeah, they wandered around for 40 years.
40 years
So
till
like I said, I'm returning to the thing that they were like children as far as their behavior. They don't want to accept responsibility. They were used to just follow orders. And now they see Moses as a soft spot. It's not, they don't have to obey order because now they were given choices to do or not to do. And they're acting out.
they're acting out. Exactly. I always call that book, the book of Numbers, the Israelites, the teenage years, because I feel like the they're teenagers. Okay, so they're complaining and they're romanticizing this horrible slavery as like, oh, we used to have, leeks and onions and garlic. We had flavors. Oh, okay. So just read a little more, Claudia. And then I want to have Susan Ehrlich read. Go ahead.
The manna was like coriander seed and looked like resin. The people went around gathering it and then ground it in a hand mill or crushed it in a mortar. They cooked it in a pot or made into loaves, and it tasted like something made with olive oil. When the dew settled on the camp at night, the manna also came down.
So Claudia is a chef and a cook. So what do you think? Was that tasty, do you think?
Well, it doesn't sound horrible, but I can imagine that if you have the same thing day in and day out, it gets old. And in their defense, we're all very prone to romanticize the past.
Yes.
How annoying is it when you're like a young person and you hear older people say, oh, well, in my day, you're just going to strangle them. So it is like also the definition of like, I think, a very human trait.
I agree with you.
Mm.
According to the Midrash, which, the Midrash, I love the Midrash because they always try to explain things or justify things or embellish things. According to the Midrash, the manna tasted like anything you wanted it to taste like. If you said, oh, it's, honey cake, it tasted like honey cake. Oh, if it tastes like chicken soup, it tastes like chicken soup, according to the Midrash. But according to the text, it was pretty bland tasting.
And also a lot of hard work, because if you have to gather it and ground it by hand and then crush it, it's a lot of work.
Right.
It's easy to catch a fish and put it on the grill.
And they have this craving for meat, though it doesn't really address that supposedly they were giving sacrifices and they had all these flocks with them. So I'm not sure what this is really about, because they were sacrificing. So, and when you sacrifice, you eat meat. So it's very interesting, this story and what it's really about. Okay, now Susan Ehrlich, here is Moses having his breakdown, basically. Hold on, I want to make sure that it goes. Go ahead, verse 10. Susan, you're muted. Susan, you're muted.
I said, I wanted to ask you something. You said they were doing sacrifices. So
Well, they had the tabernacle. They
yeah,
had the Mishkan. They were doing something.
yeah, but it wasn't the That's
Yeah.
a very good question.
I know. That's why this isn't about history. This is about something else, I think. It's about human.
Yeah, it has to be, because some of the other things that they were sacrificing, I got it with the goats and the sheep. So that was some meat.
Right.
That's what they were sacrificing.
Okay. Jennifer, did you have a question? I see that it says you raised your hand.
Oh, sorry, I had to unmute. I'm sorry I'm not on video. I just had to go outside. And I'm so glad to be in class. I'm so grateful to you, Rabbi Nanus, and everyone participating. Makes my day. I wanted to just say I love how human the Torah is, in that I hope I'm not the only one who will romanticize the past and even the future. To, someone asks you to do something, or, oh, you've got an obligation in 2 weeks, and oh, yes, that'll be wonderful. And then, so anyway, I'm just so glad that it's painting. It just, I can, yeah, that was it.
Okay. Go ahead, Susan. Wait, Panina. Let's just read this because this is really what I want to talk about. Susan.
Okay. I get Moses in anger. Moses heard the people of every family wailing at the entrance to their tents. The Lord became exceedingly angry, and Moses was troubled. He asked the Lord, "Why have you brought this trouble on your servant? What have I done to displease you that you put the burden of all these people on me? Did I conceive all these people? Did I give them birth? Yeah. Why do you tell me to carry them in my arms as a nurse carries an infant to the land that you promised on oath to their ancestors? Where can I get meat for all these people? They keep wailing to me. Give us meat to eat. I can't carry all these people by myself. The burden is just too heavy for me."
Okay, just read verse 15. Go ahead.
So if this is how you're going to treat me, please go ahead and kill me. If I have found favor in your eyes, and do not let me face my own ruin.
Okay, so he's just falling apart. So what is he saying? And this reinforces the idea of that they are all children, they're infants. So what is he saying about them, about these people? What's he saying?
He didn't create
feel
it.
like
It's your fault, God. You the one who birthed these people, and now you're burdening me with them, and they're fetching all the time, and I can't take this. So just kill me.
Kill me before, unless so I won't be a failure, because I'm failing. Merle, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say back before this, I think all these complaints they had animals that could be qualified as meat. I think they had a fear that if they used all their own resources, when they got to the other side, whenever that was, they weren't going to have anything left.
Good point.
That's possible. You're right.
I'm just, I'm writing my own midrash here.
Right. But the thing that's so interesting is he's saying, am I like a mother? You've turned me into the mother of hundreds of thousands of people. Did I give birth to them? Did I carry them in a nurse? What have you done to me? He's like, I give up. I give up. I can't do it. He's just, poor Moses. They're never happy. And it just gets worse as the book of Numbers continues. So, and if you're going to treat me like this, just kill me now. I can't, I don't want to live. I can't, I just can't. Now, I don't think he really means kill me, but he's like, just fed up. Have you ever
get me off of this?
You're fed up.
I don't want to do this anymore.
Leaders, can be in the family dynamic, but also there are leaders who lead groups or even synagogue leaders. And you're like, oh my God, this is so hard. People are never happy, on every level. We can really, so poor Moses is also extremely human here. He's really can't take it anymore. And God really has empathy, real empathy for in this story is Moses. They have this amazing relationship where God really hears his pain and he's going to make it better for Moses. he's going to make it better. So this is a very interesting solution and it's fascinating. So would somebody read? Who would like to read? Who never reads? Brad, you want to read? But unmute yourself if you're going to read. Do you want to read, Brad? He's looking. It's on the verse 16.
I got to move everything out of the way here
okay,
to get
yeah.
to it.
Okay.
The Lord said to Moses, bring me 70 of Israel's soldiers who are known to you as leaders.
Elders.
Oh, elders.
Yeah.
Who are known to you as leaders and officials among the people. Have them come to the tent of meeting that they may stand there with you. I will come down and speak with you there, and I will take some of the power of the Spirit that is on you and put it on them. They will share the burden of the people with you so that you will not have to carry it alone.
So this is extraordinary.
Well, this brings us back to Moses's father-in-law, who impressed on him the need to delegate. And here is God telling him to delegate in a way.
Yes, but Moses.
It's the same message after Moses's hissy fit.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think it was a hissy fit?
Well, I do, because I think that the people were, I think we've been overly harsh on the people. I don't think that they were, glorifying their past. I think they were probably speaking very realistically about their past. And I don't blame them for being fed up with eating the same thing every day. So, so Moses initially says to God, why have you brought this trouble on your servant? And so he goes at God, which is, I think, a valid point. But then he devolves into a hissy fit, and and it becomes all about me and me and me and me and me.
That's a very interesting perspective. And what about this idea? Well, he's not just going to delegate like duties. What is God going to do to these 70 people? What's he going to do? He's going to give them the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. He's going to give them like prophetic powers or spiritual strength, which is interesting that, God, that's his solution, that, only Moses had it. And I'm going to bring this Ruach, the Spirit on that is only on you and put it on them. So he's going to make them holy, make them kind of junior prophets or something, which I think this is a very unique event in the Torah between God and the people as a solution to the problem. He said, okay, I'll take it off of you to some degree, as opposed to telling Moses to suck it up. He hears him, which is interesting. He doesn't hear the people, as Brad said, but he hears Moses. Okay, so what happens to the people? Who would like to read verse 18, this paragraph? Lynn.
But can I just interject something? I liked Brad's analysis there, because some of it wasn't all just fantasizing. Every stage in life has, I think, some pros and cons. And I mean, some are all cons. I mean, we're talking anti-Semitism in Europe, but they had to work, but they didn't have to. They probably had better food, and there probably were things, and they didn't have moral responsibility, which takes a lot too. So they are recalling some things that were probably, there was some truth in that.
Yeah, and also, as Claudia said, it was a lot of work to prepare this food, and it was probably just given to them when they were slaves, like, here's your meal or whatever. So now they had to do all this other stuff. Yes, Penina.
Every time that there is an event or something happening there, it gives us kind of like a background to something else that will come out of it. something in history that will change, something that they learn from it, something that brought upon a certain idea or a mitzvah or I think this is the beginning of the Sanhedrin, the 70 people.
Oh, I think the commentaries say you're absolutely right. That was 70 wise men who, when
Yeah.
in the land of Israel
Yes.
was the high
This
court, the
is
Supreme
exactly.
Court.
Right. They showed you that something good came out of this whole thing. It was an experience that they went through that brought a necessity of a community taking care of the people, of themselves, judging them, solving problems, and not to leave it to one person. So
You're absolutely right. And later on in the Talmud, and maybe you know this, Penina, there's this huge argument between about is this it's about this oven. It's called the Tanur of Achnai, the oven of Achnai. Is it kosher or unkosher? And Rabbi Gamliel, who's the head and very smart, says it's not kosher, and all the other people say it's kosher. So then the rabbi says, if I'm right, may the trees rise like 10 feet in the air to prove me, and they do. I mean, in the story. No, it's still not kosher. Well, but if I'm right, may the rivers reverse course, and they do. Not kosher. And then he says, if I'm right, may God speak to you and tell you I'm right. And so God, they hear the voice of Bat Kol, which called is a little voice saying he's right. And they say, no, you gave us the Torah. It's ours to decide now, not yours. And then God is very pleased. My children have done the right thing. So, which is, a myth, a midrash. It's in the Talmud, but it's this idea of exactly what Penina said. People finally took it on for themselves, and this is the seeds of this, or the beginning of it.
right, that was the stage, kind of
Okay,
like.
so Penina, why don't you read verse 18?
Tell the people, consecrate yourselves in preparation for tomorrow, when you will eat meat. The Lord heard you when you wailed. If only we had meat to eat. We were better off in Egypt. Now the Lord will give you meat, and you will eat it. You will not eat it for just one day, or 2 days, or 5, 10 or 20 days, 20, but for the whole month. In other words, he's going to give them so much, they're going to get sick of it.
Right.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay. You will not eat
Now,
for
until it comes out of your nostrils.
but for a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and you loathe it, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you, and have wailed before him, saying, why did we ever leave Egypt?
So it's like God's going to do the prophecy part, but first he's dealing with the people, and he's not very understanding, is he, Brad? Not understanding. He's saying, fine, you want meat. It's like when I was a kid, I bet many of you had this experience in those days. If you cried for no reason, my father used to say, all right, you're going to cry? I'm going to give you something to cry about.
But
okay, I'll stop crying. You want to cry? I'll give you something to cry about. And it's threatening a spanking. So, which
I think this is I think the fire that surrounded the camp was this thing. You wanted something to complain about, and I hear, instead of a slap on the face, he gave them that fire. Now let's see.
Maybe, Brad.
Well, I think I would argue that this is showing more Moses's weaknesses than the people's weaknesses. I think Moses should have done a better job of standing up for the people. And Moses should have listened many, many years ago when he was told to delegate by his father-in-law. And he hasn't done that. So, we're given two examples, I think, of where Moses has been weak. And now the people are going to get the brunt of it, unfortunately.
So do you think this is like the beginning of God's decision that Moses will not go into the land?
I do. I think we're seeing Moses in decline.
I think that's really interesting. I personally have not seen it that way. And now you're opening my eyes to a new way to look at it. Yes, Roy.
I wouldn't agree with the argument that Moses is in decline. The Musar Torah commentary says this is an example of anavah. It's Moses having humility, saying that he can't do it all himself, or he doesn't have the skill set. And then ultimately what we see when he appeals to God is that God now delegates authority to others within the community, rather than having Moses just as the singular leader. He accepts that he doesn't have that ability. And then what we'll see is that now the authority, the leadership has been divested more among the community. So we're seeing sort of a leadership growth within the Jewish people.
You're right, but as Brad pointed out, he was told to do that by his father-in-law at Sinai before he said he gave him a very specific, blueprint of how to do that. One would have assumed that Moses did it, but now we're seeing that he didn't do it. And so I think you're right. You can go either way. And I love the Musar and I love the Torah and I love the rabbis, but they will always justify Moses and God. They'll always find a way to justify, which is not necessarily in the text, but they extrapolate, and we're extrapolating something else, which they needed that in their time, and we're looking at the frailty of humanity and trying to be understanding in our time. They wanted to see Moses as perfect, and so his perfection included humility and admitting when he couldn't do something. But in that vein of Moses complaining, look at verse 21, which you can read it either way, any way you want, but he seems to be saying, I don't even think this is possible. This is where he's at. So Lynn, did you want to read? Okay, but on Lynn, you're muted.
Sorry.
Sorry.
But Moses said, "Here I am among 600,000 men on foot, and you say, I will give them meat to eat for a whole month. Would they have enough if flocks and herds were slaughtered for them? Would they have enough if all the fish in the sea were caught for them?"
Keep going.
The Lord answered Moses, "Is the Lord's arm too short? Now you will see whether or not what I say will come true for you." So Moses went out and told the people what the Lord had said. He brought together 70 of their elders and had them stand around the tent.
Okay, so it's two things going on at once. It's interesting. He's saying, I'm going to give everybody meat till it comes out of their nostrils. And Moses saying, how are you going to do that? Where's this coming from? And at the same time, he's saying, I'm going to bring the Spirit, or the Ruach, the Holy Spirit. The Christians use that word, the Holy Spirit or the Holy Ghost, but it's really a Hebrew expression, Ruach HaKodesh, which Lynn, how would you translate Ruach HaKodesh?
Exactly. The Holy Spirit.
But it's not really.
No, it's like a divine inspiration.
That's closer.
An idea that will walk.
It's literally a Holy Spirit, but it's when you have Ruach HaKodesh on you, it's like a prophetic or divine level of vision or understanding or inspiration, I think, as opposed to, I don't know what Holy Spirit means. When you say the words Holy Spirit, I don't know what that means really. It doesn't.
I would call it a smart thinking.
Yeah. Okay.
At the right time.
Okay. So there's two things going on. Moses complaining and disbelieving this. And yes, it mentions the flocks and herds, by the way, that we were wondering where they were. And as Merle said, they didn't want to eat them. They wanted other stuff. You know how that is, like with your kids, really? Like they don't want to spend their allowance. They want you to pay for something. Like you give them an allowance and they say, well, you buy this, so what about your allowance? Oh, no, I'm saving that. You have to buy it. I'm saving my allowance. Similar mentality here seems to be, possibly. So, okay, so here comes this really interesting, experience that I don't see it anywhere else in the Torah, this section. So let's just look at this. Natalie, do you want to read? But you have to unmute if you do.
Sorry, what number? We're 20.
25.
Then the Lord came down in a cloud and spoke to him. He drew upon the spirit that was on him and put it upon the 70 elders.
So she has a slightly different translation, which is fine.
I do.
That's okay.
And when the spirit rested upon them, they spoke in ecstasy, but did not continue. 2 men, one named Eldad and the other Medad, had remained in camp, yet the spirit rested upon them. They were among those recorded, but they had not gone out to the tent, and they spoke in ecstasy, as if in the camp. A youth ran out and told Moses, saying, Eldad and Medad are acting the prophet in the camp. And Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' attendant from his youth, spoke up and said, My Lord Moses, restrain them. But Moses said to him, Are you wrought up on my account? With that, all the Lord's people were prophets, and the Lord put his spirit upon them. Moses then re-entered the camp, and together with the elders of Israel.
Okay, so what happened? This is really interesting. And I like, here it says they prophesied, and then in Natalie's translation, they spoke in ecstasy. And I have to wonder if this is one of the sources for the fundamentalist Christians who speak in tongues, because it kind of reminds me of like speaking in tongues, if they were speaking in ecstasy or they were prophesying. But what happened here? Who can explain what happened here?
They had, it is like a religious trance. I remember, in some of the Native American cultures, they had certain herbs and they spoke in tongues or trances, but to access their gods. We'll come back to this, but I just wanted to say one thing. I like Roy's comment, and I don't think Moses is totally to blame. He did appoint elders, and the elders, beforehand, judges that Yitro had asked him to do, but they were to settle disputes, in my understanding. It was not to lead the people as sources from God. So he was fulfilling it. And the bottom line is he got God to react and to help out by, so he did, by saying, I'm through with this, I'm done. He did push God to react and to ameliorate the situation to a degree. Okay.
But may I?
Yes.
By reading this, it seems very apparent that Moses is not a leader, as in someone who can inspire people. He's an executor. He asks what the Lord wants him, he does what the Lord asks him to do, but he's unable to inspire. 40 years is a long time to,
it's not 40 years. It's not even in the beginning. It's just like a year and a half.
But he's not a leader. And, his humility, which is so praised justly, if you look at this verse, when he says to his attendant, are you jealous for my sake? He's not bothered by it. Power is taken away from him because it's being spread out over, a number of people, but he doesn't seem bothered by it. And I don't think he's at any point has been able to inspire the Israelites.
I think I want to hear from everybody else. I want to point out it's interesting that the book of Deuteronomy, which is the 5th book, which I've talked in different classes about how this was discovered like 300 years or after they were in the land, or 400 years after they were in the land. And, biblical scholars say this was written by the prophet Jeremiah, and it was written by the scribes of the time. And then they said, oh, here's a 5th book of the Torah. And the whole book are in these incredible, articulate, inspirational speeches by Moses. And the critics, the biblical scholars say, well, this is a completely different Moses than the Moses of the previous, from Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers. He's articulate, he's a visionary, he's, has beautiful imagery, he teaches the Shema and the V'ahavta and all this stuff. Different writers imbued Moses with other qualities that we do not see in the more ancient writings. So I think right now, I think it's a cool, interesting conversation. What kind of leader was Moses? And I want to add one more thing, and then I'm going to call him Penina. Remember, at the very beginning, he said, I'm not the man for the job, and I'm not a good speaker. He has a speech impediment. So maybe he doesn't like to talk, but suddenly in Deuteronomy, he's amazingly, articulate. Okay, Penina.
Okay, we have to understand what the word prophet really means and what were their role in the society when they were prophets, that the whole book about prophets was written. The prophets were not really telling of things to come actually. What they were doing is warning the people that if their behavior or the events are not going to be right, then certain bad things will come on them. For example, they prophesied that if they're not going to be unified, an enemy is going to come and take over. And
we don't know what they prophesied. We just know
they didn't prophesy. They were warning the people.
But we don't know what they said because we don't have any words.
Now, here it says that those two prophesied at the camp.
But we don't know what they said, what they were warning about.
Because all they could say is like maybe gave them a picture of what could happen if they're not going to follow the rules and if they're not going to be unified and if they're not stopping from fighting among themselves or bothering Moses. So the word prophesizing is actually the cue to their ability to warn them of what will happen if they are not going to do whatever it is they're supposed to do. And this is what the real prophets always said. What the word Navi means, it's what's to come.
That's right.
It's what will come in the future. Mayavo.
Thank you. That's really, you're right. And I just want to point out that Joshua, this is the first time that I myself am reading where it says, a young man ran up and told Moses, and he was Joshua, the son of Nun, who had been Moses' aide since youth.
Right.
So we know that when Moses dies, Joshua is the next leader.
Right.
So they were friends, and he was following him, and he was very protective. He said, my God, stop them. They're prophesying. Are you jealous for me? I wish all the people were prophets, and then he returned to the camp. And then, what happens? So now let's just look at this because I'm not.
Wait, can I just say one quick thing?
Yeah, wait. A number of people raised their hands, but I can't.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, go ahead. Forget me.
No, you can go ahead. Go ahead. Say what you want to say.
I just wanted to say I have a lot of compassion for I almost said Mozart, for Moses, because here's the thing, he's dealing with the real people. And we know he has problems delegating responsibility and all of that. But, when I think about God in this picture, God just sends down another miracle. Well, I'll drop, the meat. So it all starts with the miracles, the plagues, and then the parting of the Red Sea. So I wanted to just put that in, that Moses is operating with real people, and God can resolve with miracles. And then the last thing is, if let's just picture Moses is the ideal leader, everything is ship-shape, there'd be no presence in a way of God in this whole story because there'd be no need for any miracles.
Yeah, and also one of the great things about the Torah is everyone is flawed, so we can be flawed too.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that.
Okay, Valerie, I see your little hand up in the icon.
It was from before. So
go ahead.
No, it was from the food section. I liked this telling us what people were eating back then. There's a written document and know what people, right, a reflection of the times. So these were issues. This is what people were eating. And I guess I also like the sarcasm in the paragraph before about your arms too short. What are my arms too short? Is that like, what would be the real, this is the editor's interpretation, but it's
of God's limited abilities, are you saying?
Yeah, but I like that. Yeah.
Because he had an outstretched arm during the liberation from Egypt, that it was like the outstretched arm, and now, he's saying, what, my arm isn't long enough? Do you want to read, why don't you read 31
to
the end of this chapter?
Now a wind went out from the Lord and drove quail in from the sea. It scattered them up to 2 cubits deep all around the camp, as far as a day's walk in any direction. All that day and night, and all the next day, the people went out and gathered quail. No one gathered less than 10 homers.
I guess that's a measurement. Go ahead.
They then spread them out all around the camp. But while the meat was still between their teeth, and before it could be consumed, the anger of the Lord burned against the people, and he struck them with a severe plague. Therefore, the place was named Kilbrath Hatavah, because there they buried the people who had craved other food. From Kilbrath Hatavah, the people traveled to Hazeroth and stayed there.
Very, very harsh, unless one thinks about it as they all got dysentery or they all got sick, from eating it, and it was natural death. But this story is, okay, I'm not happy with this story.
No.
I'm not happy. So it says 2 people raised their hand, but I don't see who raised their hand. So who wants to speak? You have to raise your literal hand, because I don't, Jody, what do you think about this?
It's extremely harsh. First God gives them the food and then he makes them sick with it. It seems like really, really mean-spirited. I'd like to think it was just an accident, that they just got bird flu or something.
No accident.
Watching on your phone.
Well, I would like to think so too, but I mean, the story in general.
It's not an accident.
Oh,
yeah, no, it doesn't. I'm just saying, I'd like to think it was, but it's obviously the way it's written is like, no, he did this on purpose. God did it on purpose, and it seems like a very severe punishment.
So what?
Susan?
Yeah. Miriam, hi.
Hi, everyone. I seem to be looking at it with some new eyes here. Of course, at my age, I can use new eyes. I can use new everything. But they had to be complaining a lot before God turned to them. In other words, when you ask a question, you're not a complainer. When you ask your question 5 times, you become a nudge and a complainer. But then, does not that also imply that you're not getting an answer? Because if you were to ask it for time, then you would get an answer, and you wouldn't have to be a complainer.
Natalie, wait,
I'm sorry.
Can you mute just because we can hear you?
I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry.
That's okay. Everybody.
My husband just walked in. He didn't realize
that
this was a very important class.
Okay. Miriam, go ahead, Miriam.
Sorry.
Well, I think I said it. You become a complainer when you ask for something several times. You become a complainer and a nudge and a pest and a nudnik and everything else. If you ask a question and you get your answer, then you do not have to become a complainer. Apparently, Moses was tired of hearing them complain, but Moses also wasn't getting any answers from God until God did answer him and then say to him, yes, I will give you manna until I become meat, and you'll be so sick of eating it. But isn't that the story of a complainer that they need to ask many times?
So let's look at this. Let's say this was an Aesop's fable, this story.
Right.
What's the message? You know, like they always have a little moral at the end. What's the log line moral of this fable or this story, would you say? What would it be? Oh, yeah, Penina, and then
Well,
Natalie.
It was a warning, like I said. The prophet was supposed to be warning them of
No,
what
but
to
give me
do.
the little message. What's the message? Like,
The
don't
message
count
is
your
that in
tickets
the end-
before your hatch. What is it?
Yeah. Okay, there was a reason why the meat wasn't given to them. It probably wasn't good for them. So the message is that you complain, and now it showed that Moses was still in control. He knew what he was doing. He followed God's orders. God knew what he was doing. He didn't want them to have it because they got sick.
Okay.
It wasn't the place to eat all this meat.
Okay, Natalie.
The message in this story is you listen to God or you are getting punished, period.
Is there any other message? Yes, Merle?
Greed won't get you anywhere.
Greed won't get you anywhere. Okay, any other message? Any other message that strikes anyone?
To me, I hear gratitude.
Oh, Pamela, what did you just say?
I feel like it's a message about gratitude.
I would agree with you. Can you expand?
Well, just that here I've given you enough to eat. You have enough. You'll get through it. It's nutritious. It's tasty. You make of it what you will. Yes, you've had to work for it. You got your freedom. Freedom comes with a price. If you want to remain sort of infantile children as slaves, then it can be simple. Stay in Egypt and be that infantile person. But you want to sort of grow up and be an adult. So you have your freedom, you have your responsibility. And so be grateful for what you get. And also, in some sense, be grateful for what you don't get, right? Like you think you want all these other things, but maybe what you really want is exactly what you have and it's all fine.
Or maybe you don't appreciate what you have. Exactly.
Yeah. Appreciate what you have and also appreciate what you don't have, right? Because now you're flooded with all of these dead animals or whatever that he bestowed upon them. So, but to me, I hear just generally gratitude out of it is be grateful for what you have and, you know, understand that the price of freedom comes with responsibility.
Okay. Yes, wait, who else is speaking?
Yeah, I would say the message is the ways of the Lord are mysterious. Okay. Why God said manna but not meat? You know, why we don't? These are things that are beyond human understanding, and our role is just to accept.
Oh. Okay, I mean, the manna was kind of a natural thing that fell every day, you know, and it was able to feed all these hundreds of thousands of people. And the meat thing, you know, they create, yeah, that's interesting. The ways, okay, so we have different points of view. The ways of God are mysterious. You got to listen to God or you're going to be punished. Be grateful, have gratitude for what you have, and, you know, grow up. Take some responsibility for your life, or maybe, you know, this is like kind of a joke. If you really want meat, slaughter your own animals and do without, you know, or whatever. But it's a really fascinating thing because in the middle of it, there's this prophecy thing that now, and we have a little time. This is such an important little section now that I know we only have 5 minutes, but I really want to just talk about it. And the very first, I'm just going to read you the first 3 lines and tell you what happened here according to the Midrash. Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. Now, a Cushite is a black woman, by the way. If you didn't know, Moses had a black wife. Cush is either Sudan or Ethiopia. And it's possible was part of Midian, that Midian could have been Sudan. So either the rabbis like to think they're talking about his wife Zipporah, that it's not a second wife, because where would he have found her? I don't know, married her, suddenly, that they're talking about Zipporah, that his wife was always a dark-skinned woman, and they were talking about her. And then they said, has the Lord spoken only through Moses, they asked? Hasn't he also spoken through us? And the Lord heard this. Now, Moses was a very humble man, as Roy pointed out, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth. So what happens here is God reproves them, and then he afflicts Miriam with leprosy because of this incident. At once the Lord said to Moses and Aaron and Miriam, come out to the tent of the meeting, all three of you. So the three of them went out, and the Lord came down in a pillar of a cloud, and he stood at the entrance, and he summoned Aaron and Miriam. When the two of them stepped forward, he said, listen to my words. When there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, reveal myself to them in visions. I speak to them in dreams. But this is not true of my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak face to face, clearly, not in riddles. He sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant? And he was very angry. And when the cloud lifted, Miriam's skin was leprous. It became as white as snow. Okay. So this is a very interesting story, because the rabbis say what Miriam was saying. Miriam and Zipporah were very good friends. Miriam is Moses' sister. Zipporah is Moses' wife. And according to the rabbis and the Midrash, or the Midrash Rabbah about this, ever since Moses came down from Sinai, we read that his face was aglow and he wore a mask or a covering over his face all the time, except when he had to give a message to the people. He was very remote, and he stopped having sex with his wife. This is all in the commentaries. And so Zipporah, when she saw Eldad and Medad, who was in the previous chapter, became prophets, she said to Miriam, well, I feel sorry for their wives, because they're going to suffer now and never see their husbands like me. So Miriam goes to Aaron and says, he's married. Cushite, they also say, is another word for beautiful woman. He married this beautiful woman. He's not having sex with her. Has the Lord only spoke through Moses? We also have spoken God words, and we have relationships with our spouses. Who does Moses think he is to make his wife suffer? So that Miriam was talking in defense of Zipporah's loneliness, according to the rabbis. And what God was saying is, you should have talked to Moses yourself and not talked about him. And this whole incident is really about gossip, not about slander or, putting down a black wife, which one could read into it, but that according to the rabbis, which I love this value system of the rabbis, what they're saying is this is really about gossip, and gossip is as damaging as leprosy. It deteriorates and degrades and invades you, like on your skin, into your soul. Lashon hara is gossip. In Hebrew, that means evil tongue. So this whole thing is really about the evil, destructive power of gossip. And that if Miriam had gone to Moses directly and said, why are you, neglecting your wife? There wouldn't have been a problem, according to the rabbis. But that if they talked behind his back was the sin. And that when you're a leader, like Aaron and Moses, you have to have a high standard. You have to be an example to the people. The question is, why did only Miriam get punished and not Moses? Not Aaron. Why did Miriam get the leprosy and not Aaron? And since I'm going to be teaching for 4 weeks in a row, that's how they decided it. I'm going to leave it here, even though we'll do next week's Torah portion next week. We're going to pick up here just for like 10 minutes at the beginning to try to talk about that and the way that Moses prayed for her with the prayer that now is considered the original Mishaberach prayer. El na rafan Allah, God, please heal her now. And that is in here. And we chant that and we say that whenever we're asking for someone to be healed, way before the Mishaberach. This is the original Mishaberach. So we're going to look at that tune next week. And then we'll continue on to more bad behavior by the Israelites and more despair by Moses. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This is great to study.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank
Shabbat
you.
Shalom, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks
Shabbat
so much.
Shalom.
Great.
Bye. Bye.
Shabbat Shalom. Bye.
All right, how do I end this thing? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another great session.
Thank you.
Can't wait till next week.
Thank you.
Be well, Susan.